There are lots of different ways to make a traditional granny square, but I'm going to show you in this video my unique take on the traditional granny square, where I show you how to eliminate the chains, the turning chains at the beginning of the round, and substitute with a stacked single crochet to make a much smoother transition between rounds. So let's get started. So for this video, I'm using a worsted weight yarn. In this case, I'm using Knit Picks Brava worsted, and I'm using a size H 5mm hook. That's what I prefer to do a granny square in. So I'm going to start by showing you two different ways to start the granny square. The traditional way is to slip knot, then chain 4. So every granny square starts with a center ring because we're going to be working in the round. So I usually chain 4 because I'm working in a worsted weight yarn, and that tends to give me the right size circle to work everything into for that first round. To form this circle with a chain 4, I'm simply going to insert my hook in the first chain I made. I plop that end over so it's behind, and I slip stitched that closed. And you'll see it's a little small, but I have a circle. Okay, so everything in round 1 is worked into that circle. So I'm going to show you how to work that first round with a chain 4 circle. For round 1, we want to work 4 granny squares with 4 chain 3 corner spaces. So instead of starting with the chain, like I said, most granny squares start with, I'm going to start with a stacked single crochet. So let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to insert my hook in the center of that ring, yarn over and pull up a loop. So I have 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Then I'm going to find the left vertical bar, which is here, right there, and I'm going to insert my hook in underneath that vertical bar, yarn over, pull up a loop. I have 2 loops on the hook, and I pull through to finish the stitch. Now it's a little wide when it starts, but once it gets blended into the rest of the texture, it looks like a double crochet. So this is the first double crochet of my granny stitch, which in this case is 3 double crochet in the space. So in this space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. That's my second double crochet. I add a third to that, and that's my first granny stitch. Chain 3 to create a corner. Then I'm going to work another granny stitch in the ring. Remember, you're working with, in a traditional granny square, you're working with granny stitches throughout. And a granny stitch is 3 double crochet in the same space. All right, so there's my second granny stitch. I chain 3 again to give me my second corner, and I'm going to do that a couple more times. So my next granny stitch goes in the ring. Once that granny stitch is done, I chain 3 for my corner, and I move that over just a little bit because I need to fit 1 more granny stitch in that ring. So I'm going to put that right there. And if we look at my round one, I'm still missing a corner. So I have 3 corners so far and 4 granny stitches. So the last thing I do is a chain 3 corner. Once I'm finished with that, I need to close the round. So I'm going to use a slip stitch in the top of that first stitch I made. So if you look at the top of that granny stitch, there's 1, 2, there's the first stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook underneath that top loop of the first stitch, pull it through, and I have round 1. I promised you that I would show you how to do this with the magic ring. The magic ring creates a tighter circle in the middle of your granny square. I don't mind the chain 4 ring, but some people like to have a tighter hole at the beginning of at the center of their granny square. So I'm going to show you how to do this. A little admission here, I just learned how to do a magic ring. It's crazy. Okay, so this is the end of my yarn right here. Okay, so I'm going to drape that over my middle 2 fingers. I pull it down a little bit, drape that over, then take the working yarn, the part that's attached to my ball of yarn, and I'm going to wrap that around those 2 fingers and cross it over. So you'll see that I have a cross there. All right, so I'm going to insert my hook underneath the right hand one, grab the left hand and pull it back through so that I have a loop on my hook. Okay, and now I need to form a chain, so I'm going to take that working yarn, which is this one right here, and I'm going to make a chain like so. Once I have that done, I pull it off my fingers. There's my ring, but you'll notice that the tail is twisted inside. So I always take that tail, pull it out, but I am going to crochet around it. Okay, so there's my magic circle. The first stitch is a stacked single crochet. So I'm going to take my working yarn over here. And it's a little wonky at the beginning. It feels like you're trying to hold a piece of yarn that wants to keep moving around, and it does. But once you get a couple of stitches in it, it's fine. So stacked single crochet, I insert my hook in the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, and make sure I pull it through so that I have 2 loops on my hook. To complete the bottom single crochet, I yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So that's the bottom part of the stacked single crochet. To complete it, I find that left vertical bar right there, poke my hook through, yarn over, pull up a loop. I have 2 loops on the hook again. That's the top single crochet that I'm going to finish by pulling through. So there's my stacked single crochet. To complete my first granny stitch, I work 2 more double crochet. And I'm going to work round 1 exactly like I did when I used the chain 4 ring. So I've got my granny stitch, chain 3 for the corner, granny stitch, so just check, I have 3 double crochets in that one, chain 3 for the corner, another granny stitch, just check to make sure you didn't get too many double crochets in that granny stitch. There we go. Another corner. And I need 1 more granny stitch in that ring. And round 1 ends with the 4th corner, which is the chain 3. Now with the magic ring, you'll notice that this is far too wide, right? So the last thing before I join that I need to do is pull this tail and pull that center ring tight. So I'm just going to pull on it. You'll notice that this circle is getting smaller, and I can pull that pretty much as tight as those stitches will allow me to do. That's about it. So there's my center ring, and I need to join with a slip stitch to the beginning stitch. So once again, here is my initial granny stitch, 1, 2, there's my beginning stitch. I insert my hook underneath the top 2 loops, yarn over and pull through both loops to complete round 1. Now this is where I vary from other makers. Normally, if you're using a chain, at this point you would chain 4 because you want a double crochet here and a chain 1 space, and then you're going to start working this corner. But I'm going to work a stacked single crochet in this corner, which is behind the hook, or as I describe in the pattern, to the right of the hook. Because I'm always, if I'm right-handed, I'm always working from right to left. This is actually behind or to the right of the hook. It's going to look a little bit difficult to begin with, but trust me, it's not that hard. So make sure this loop isn't really tight. We want that fairly loose so that I can insert in that space, yarn over, pull up a loop, and I'm going to adjust my loops to make sure that they're the same height, and I have 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over, pull through those 2 loops, and then I'm going to insert my hook in that left vertical bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, and I have 2 loops on my hook again, yarn over, pull through those 2 loops. And that counts as it's actually the last double crochet of the round. Now I need a chain 1 space. So I'm going to chain 1. And in this next corner space, I'm going to work a granny stitch, chain 3, granny stitch. So first off, I do my granny stitch. Then my chain 3 corner. In that same space, I'm going to work another granny stitch. And that completes the corner, right? Now I need to chain 1 because I'm going to create a space for the granny stitch in the next round. So I chain 1, and I'm just going to repeat that same thing around. I'm going to do the granny stitches in this chain space, then I'm going to chain 1. So in this next corner space, granny stitch, chain 3, and another granny stitch. Okay, and then I chain 1 to get to the next corner. So I'm going to finish the last 2 corners and meet you, finish this corner, and then I'm going to meet you in the last corner so that you can see how we complete that corner with this stitch already in it. All right, I finished that 3rd corner. There's 1, 2, 3. I have a chain 1 space in between each. So I'm going to complete the corner that has this stitch already worked into it. So I start by doing a granny stitch. Then I do my chain 3 as usual. And now I need to complete the granny stitch I started at the very beginning. So I already have one. This counts as a double crochet. So I just worked 2 more double crochets in this space. And that is the end of round 2. Now I need to join. So this right here is the chain 1 that follows the corner space. So I want to join with a slip stitch in the top of that stacked single crochet that I started the round with. So I'm going to insert my hook under both loops at the top and slip stitch that together. And what you have, you can still kind of see where the stacked single crochet is, but it blends into the texture of the granny square a lot better than a chain 3 or a chain 4. All right, so that is, let me show it to you without the hook in the way. That is round 2. So round 3 of a traditional granny square starts in this chain 1 space right next to where I stopped. So I can't start until I'm in that space. So the first thing I do with round 3 is I slip stitch into that space, which then means I'm now starting in that chain 1 space. And I'm going to work a granny stitch in this space, starting with my stacked single crochet. And then I work 2 more double crochets in that space to complete the granny stitch. After that, I chain 1 to create that space for the next round. And I'm going to work a corner here. As you recall, the corner is granny stitch, chain 3, granny stitch. So I'm going to work that. All right, there's the first granny stitch, chain 3, and granny stitch. Once I have that corner complete, I'm going to chain 1, as I always do, and put a granny stitch right here in the chain 1 space from round 2. And chain 1. All right, so I just simply repeat that pattern around. I'm going to work a corner. This is the corner in this corner space, and then a granny stitch in this chain 1 space, and I'm going to work all the way around. I will meet you at the end of round 3. Okay, I have finished round 3. I finished that last corner and I did my last chain 1, and all we have left to do is to join with a slip stitch. So once again, we're going to find that beginning stitch, insert my hook under the top loops, and slip stitch. All right, now notice where we are at the end of round 3. We're back at a place where there are stitches to the left going forward, and there's a space behind. This is for round 4. We simply repeat what we did in round 2. So I would start with that stacked single crochet in the space behind, chain 1, and proceed. Right, so if the more you build out your granny square, you'll see that the pattern emerges where every even numbered round starts in the space behind with a stacked single crochet, and then when we come around, we finish whatever space we're in. Here in round 2, it was finishing a corner, but it was really finishing that granny stitch there. We're going to do the same thing in round 4, where we go all the way around and we come back and we put 2 more double crochets in that chain 1 space to finish the granny stitch. Then all of the odd number rows are going to begin exactly the same way as round 3, where we slip stitched into the space going forward or to the left, and then we start by making a granny stitch in that space and chain 1. So the anatomy of a granny square is like so. I'm using chain 1 spaces and I'm using chain 3 corner spaces. So at each one of the corners, I've worked chain 3 so that I have enough room to work those 2 granny stitches that are going to go in that space. So in my patterns, I call this the chain 3 corner space. Sometimes I use chain 2, but most of the time it's chain 3. These spaces that are between corners, where we chained 1, are called chain 1 spaces, right? And they only have enough room, technically, to hold a granny stitch. So between the corners, as we build out the rounds, we're going to add 1 more space and 1 more granny stitch along the side, so that we're building our square out. Chain 3 corner space, chain 1 space, and these are granny stitches. So make your granny square as large as you like and add it to a project or let it stand on its own.